Well, Budreya, thank you very much for joining us here on the Asian Game to talk about a very exciting project that you've been working on over the last almost 12 months now. It's been BANAAT FC. Tell us, where did the vision for this club come from? Give us the backstory of how it came about, but perhaps more importantly, rather than just how it came about, why this came about as well.
Sure. So I launched BANAAT FC in August of 2023. So it was on Emirati Women's Day. And I think the idea actually came to me on August 2nd. So it was less than a month, I guess, from idea to execution and launch. I hadn't thought about doing anything in women's football, anything, I guess, that required this much commitment before. The most I thought about was doing a travel video podcast discussing women's football in the Arab region. But that was all quite recent because of the buzz you're hearing and seeing around the world with the Women's World Cup and what Saudi's doing. So I thought it was time we did something here. And then I was in I was in Egypt. I flew to do work on a campaign for Adidas, for Al Ahli Football Club. And on my way back, a social media post popped up from a Saudi club that looked very outdated. Not like something you would post in 2024. I'm talking about format, not so much the content, although that was also somewhat questionable. But it could have looked so much better considering the amount of money that's in football here and the eyes that are on us right now. And it got me frustrated. And I was so used to being frustrated with how things are done and then doing something about it. But it was always in the service industry because I'm a consultant in marketing and football strategy. This time I thought, instead of getting upset like I always do and offering a service, let me try and do something about it and create something that would become the benchmark for Arab football representation, in a very humble way. So I came back to Dubai, went to the office the next day, and I didn't have complete clarity on what that would be just yet. And when I went to the office the next day, I saw something on women's football here, popped up on the league, and I noticed how none of the women's clubs had an Arabic name, and that immediately stood out. How there was a lack of representation in our football and our culture in our football here. And that's when I decided that I was going to remedy my frustration over a certain club's social media post by creating a women's football club that actually offers that representation, and supports an industry that desperately needed attention. And that was Banat FC. And Banat was the first word that came to mind. It's a very simple word, it means girls in Arabic. And that was that.
Mhm. Your own background, you mentioned that you'd come back from Egypt. You're working on a campaign with Al Akli Club. Give our listeners a sense as to your own background in football, in the marketing and media industry, and sort of how you've sort of come at this development of the club and your own background, and how that sort of informs the direction you've decided to go with Banat FC.
Sure. So I've been in football marketing and the sports world really since 2009. Started with Formula One, then the Dubai Sports Council, where I actually started the Dubai Sports Excellence Awards, and then I moved to football exclusively after working on Peace and Sport and futsal. I went to work with the UAE Pro League, and I became the marketing director of the league here. I did that for a few years, and then I worked for Al Ahli Club here before it merged with Shabab and became Shabab Al Ahli. And I was commercial director there. And then I decided to open my own consultancy, which is Ghost Concept, where I'm at now. And this is where we started doing something that wasn't done before in the region and was really quite limited even globally. But we focused on athlete brand development. So turning athletes into, let's call them minor celebrities, in a way. Back when athletes here, footballers, weren't sharing anything on social media. there was a serious stigma against just being active online. So we just wanted to change that. We wanted players to show who they were as humans first and then athletes, so people can connect with them on more than just their football skills and performance. We did that for a little bit, and while we were still just getting started, maybe within our second year, Nike had reached out to ask if we wanted to pitch for a campaign, for a jersey reveal campaign, which was for Shabab Al Ahli and Al Ain. And that was the first time there was any video campaigns on jersey reveals in the region. And we won that project. And since then, we've become kind of known for jersey reveal campaigns, like that being a big specialty of ours. So we did that for many years now. We've done it. So like I said, recently with Al Ahli and Adidas in Egypt, we've done that a few times there. The national team in the UAE also just last year. And then we've done at Go's Concept a lot more things like content with FIFA, anything that highlights Arab football and Arab football representation. So with FIFA, we did documentaries on Ali Al Habsi from Oman. Excuse my coffee machine, it does that sometimes. So Ali Al Habsi from Oman, and then players from around the region. So we did, different series featuring national team players from the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, and Saudi, and rebranded a football club as well. So anything to do, like I said, with the elevation of Arab football's image and representation.
Mm. I don't know. We've spoken about this before, and some of the players that you've sort of represented, if that's the right word. I can see a couple of jerseys behind you. I'm not sure if they're from some of the players, but just talk to us about some of the players, because I'm sure they're names that a lot of our listeners will recognise. We're talking about some of the biggest stars in Gulf football that you've represented. So just give us some names of the players that you've worked with.
So um, maybe the most important stories, I would say, or case studies for us would be representing Omar Al Suma, who was the captain of Syria and the historical top scorer of the Saudi Pro League. Omar started with us when he had a lot of followers already. He was already the most followed Arab footballer in the region when he started with us. And Amar was an example of what we can do for someone when they're already famous. Doesn't mean they have everything they need, and how they could still use the help to just get even better and benefit more from the position that they hold. And then Ali Saleh, who is a star UAE player, captain of Al Wasl Club, just won the league and the President's Cup, first time in 17 years, something we're very, very happy about. Ali Saleh started with us when he was, I think, 17, and before people really knew who he was. And Ali was an example of what we can do for a player when he starts young or starts from zero online. So those are a couple of our players. Others would be Amouri, who joined us maybe a couple years ago, but only on a commercial side. There was Amouri, there's Harib Abdullah from the national team, also a young star of ours. Osama Galal from Egypt, from Pyramids. Minna Tariq, also from Egypt. Lots of other players, not many coming to me right now, because we actually stopped working with players about a year ago now, except for a couple that we have here, because our focus has shifted on how can we do more for the industry on a wider scale instead of only helping a few. So that's been the focus on just delivering more to more people.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of touch on that to give our listeners some understanding of your background, extensive background in the game, particularly from the marketing side of things. Back onto BANAAT FC, it's very rare that you get the opportunity to start a club from scratch and to sort of mold it into its own identity with its own culture and principles. What has the journey been like from the moment that you had the idea through to executing it and getting started, and now you've just completed the first season? What has that journey been like over the last, what's that now? It's only 9 months, I think it is.
9 months, exactly. It's been eventful. There's been lots of ups and downs. It started incredibly smoothly. I actually called a couple of people when I came up with the idea. I called someone who's the captain of the Pakistan national team, Maria Khan, who's a friend of mine, and she works in UAE football as well and supports the league here. And I asked her what it took to start a club, thinking maybe she's going to think it's a crazy idea, but she made it seem quite attainable. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And then the decision was solidified. It was happening. I'm making a club. It's called BANAAT. It's going to be Lilac. That's what I had. Um, and then I called the national team coach here, the women's national team coach, and I told her that I was starting a football club. And she had a smile on her face and, said, we've been waiting for this. And since then, she had supported me so much at the start, especially with recruiting the players, telling me, helping me with the coach, the team admin, the players, almost giving me a full squad, really. There was an extensive list, and I had certain criteria that I needed to represent in this club because I didn't just create this club to add another club to the list that exists around here that people don't really know much about. I'm trying to do something here to better the industry or the sector of the industry. And to do that, I needed to change the perception of women's football here. Especially, I'm talking from a cultural viewpoint. Emirati households in general are a lot more traditional than people would think, even more so than Saudi. And the general wider opinion is that this is a male sport and should remain a male sport exclusively. I'm talking about general public, of course, not people running the industry. They obviously know better, which is why we have a league. But I needed to change that, try and do my part to change the general opinion so we can eventually get more support for women's football overall. So to do that, I needed to present something very specific. So my criteria out of like the list of players that they shared with me was girls who, first of all, for me, have a public social media presence or can have a public social media presence because they need to be representing the sport and being the voice and the face of this club so we can attract that attention. Second of all, they needed to be comfortable with modest clothing because my club will be represented modestly, representing Emirati values, which meant all the girls had to wear tights under their shorts and can't be revealing any extra skin in general during the game or whenever representing the club. And obviously, all the players that were recommended were all incredible players. So I had zero issue, or I didn't even need to look at technical ability or anything like that. And then another thing would be that they just represent their image, looks. Unfortunately, it's something that has to be considered. Let's say acceptable or easy to take in for people who are against women's football in general. That when they look at us, they shouldn't look at us and think we're here to defy the stereotype. We don't want to do any of that. We want to just smoothly be allowed to play and have their support. We need the fathers that are watching to look at our team and our sport and think, okay, my daughter can go and do that. It doesn't have to be for men only. It can remain within the guidelines of, the Emirati household needs. And so the team came together quite quickly. We had a great coach, great team admin, great team. The facilities, even for training, was provided by the federation. The transportation for the players was provided by them for the first few months. There was a lot of great support. So while they did that, I was able to focus on the marketing and the image and the developing and building something strong enough to get me more attention that we're lucky enough to be receiving now.
Yeah, and obviously social media is a big part of what you're doing. You mentioned the presence of the players on social media, the club on social media. You've got TikTok as an official sort of front of jersey sponsor, so that sort of feeds into that. how important social media is. You mentioned the how sort of conservative Emirati culture can be. But you'd received great support from the federation. What has been the reaction from the community, from the football community, from the wider community to what you're doing with BANAAT FC?
Um, I think from the community, it's been incredible. People were very happy to see that a football club existed, and unfortunately, from community and media, a lot of people assumed that we were the first women's football club in the country, and the first proof of presence of women's football here. But that's completely false. We've had a national team here since 2005, and we've had a league for, I think, 11 years. So it's good, and it's a bit of a wake up call as well, I guess, to the wider industry. But the community's been incredibly happy to find something that they can see, because that's incredibly important. You need to be able to see something to want to support it. So BANAAT FC was the first club that they could see, or that was making a lot of noise, at least online, to be able to get their attention. And then the industry was very supportive. Obviously, the federation, football clubs. When we moved out of the federation, for our trainings, we got support from Al Nasser Football Club, and they sponsored our training pitch for the rest of the season, which again was amazing. Considering all the clubs here don't have women's teams, I'm talking about the pro league clubs, none of them have women's football teams, which is quite sad. But I know that's going to change very soon. It has to, which is why we're doing what we're doing again. So we're here to kind of light a fire under everybody to get moving, do something, because the world's interested, the brands are interested. So at least like get on board for those reasons, for commercial reasons, if anything. Yeah, so we've gotten great support from the industry. But if we're talking about the wider industry, I would say, to give you an example, if a social media account that posts about Arab football or UAE football, posts about something BANAAT FC has done, which they've done, let's say, a few times, it's for clickbait. It's not out of support for us. It's They almost use us to get people to rage and just be quite vile on their comments about women not belonging on a pitch. And even with the modesty and our representation and all the things that we're doing right, it's sad to see a lot of comments like that. But it's the internet, that's where the bullies live, and haters love to hate, and they are more vocal than the lovers. And it's something you kind of get used to quite quickly, and especially if you've been in the sport for a long time. It was quite sad to see how little support there was for women in the industry, for women in football. But at least they're talking about us, which means they know about us. They know we're here, that we're going to stay here. And sooner or later, once we get more support from the powers that be, they're going to have to get on board too. So you know we're going to have to take it on the chin and keep going, and look forward to them sharing our news again, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a saying that there's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. So, as you said, at least they're talking about you, and they've noticed you. You mentioned Saudi Arabia before, and the great strides forward that they've made in women's football over the last few years after decades of neglect. They're turbocharging their women's football scene. We know the barriers that exist across the Gulf region when it comes to women's football, but can what's happening in Saudi Arabia be a catalyst for the rest of the region? As you said, there's a fledgling scene in the UAE that's not at that scale yet. There's virtually nothing in Qatar, but can what's happening in Saudi Arabia sort of be a catalyst for the rest of the region to look at and go, look what's happening in Saudi Arabia. This is where we need to get to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you can't you can't unsee what they've done. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. Women's football, they have broadcasting rights. They're actually on TV. We can watch their games on TV. That is wild for us. Because players from Saudi used to look at the UAE, some players, but they used to look at the UAE as the place to be for football. We had our days where we were the country regionally that female footballers were talking about and wish they played here, you know. But you see what they're doing now, and it's the support that they've gotten is insane. It's beautiful. It's something we all know we will get one day. But I think just like Saudi did, they proved that they had something worth investing in. So before the Saudi Premier League, the Women's League, they had a league pretty much like ours, which was made up of academies, first teams. But they had a solid league for a few years before then, so maybe a good 3 or 4 years, and it had, gotten more support, gotten money in, gotten maybe sponsorship. I'm not sure about that, but there was enough demand in Saudi, and I guess that demand from the players and the industry itself made it much easier for the country to look at the sport and women's football and say it's time to support them, it's time to invest, it's time to give them what they need. So they put in that work, and now it's our turn to do the same. So this is what we're doing. This is the phase we're at. This is something I'm hoping it'll take maybe 3 years for all the pro clubs to have women's teams, or do what Saudi did, which is buy out the academies that exist. BANAAT FC is not an academy, so we are not for sale, but we're going to compete. But others, you know, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel here. And also, just so you know, there is football around. Like even Qatar actually does have women's football. But the issue is people aren't sharing enough. And when you can't share, how are you going to find out if we have women's football or not? But we have a lot of cultural barriers. We have a lot of barriers. We have so many girls that actually can't be online because their parents won't let them, won't let them be photographed. Girls that can't join even the starting list, they can't be in that photo. So they have to step out and then join in later because they can't be in any photos or videos, or and that's just, it's true regionally. It's not just in the UAE. Qatar has the same issues. So it's hopefully with the change of perception that we're working on and showing the families that it can be a safe place, protected, women friendly environment, all these things that parents need, that they start allowing their girls to be out there a bit more, and then we get more eyes on the women's sport.
Absolutely, which is why I think BANAAT FC can be such a powerful vehicle for change, especially being led by a female like yourself. I remember speaking to Maria Khan. I spoke to her last year as well, but I spoke to Mariam Al Batari at Eastern Flames, and I think again, two females leading a club in Saudi Arabia it's particularly powerful in terms of changing that. To take people behind the curtain a little bit, we actually spoke last year, just around the time of the Women's World Cup, and have been intending to do this interview ever since. So apologies it's taken me so long, but across that time I've followed the journey really closely, because ever since I learned about it, it's a club that has resonated with me on the other side of the world, because it's trying to pioneer cultural change, but while still being true to the culture and the roots and its roots locally. And I think that's just incredibly powerful. And what struck me is it feels like that this is more than just a club. It feels like it's a movement that's taking place. And uh, touching on what you did before about being specific with the players that you chose, I was watching an interview today that you did recently, and you mentioned that you'd actually asked for the school grades of your players. I think it must have been during the season. I'll let you finish the story as to why you did that and why it was important? Because I think that kind of speaks to sort of what you're building and that this is just more than a football club.
Yeah. So, like you said, this is a movement. This is my chance to build something right. I'm not trying to change something because there is nothing for me to take on and change. I can build it my way. I can do what I want and how I believe a club needs to be built, especially as someone who's come from the background of managing athletes. If I used to prioritize athletes the way I did, I need to still be able to do that for them here. It can't be club or athlete coming first. They need to both grow together. And I'm very much a believer in work-life balance. Not that I have that myself, but I believe in it, and I know it's important. And I want that for my players. I want them to have the best of everything. And we don't have a developed industry here or league yet for them to be able to ever think of themselves, I think, as a professional footballers making it and making the money and not needing an education. So maybe that's something they can see down the line, hopefully in like 5 to 10 years. But in the meantime, because it hasn't been done, none of them are actually thinking, okay, I'm going to be a professional footballer, so let me take it easy on the education. No, no, you need to focus on your education because you're going to need it. And interestingly enough, I'm not that big on higher education myself. I think it's important for teaching discipline and responsibility more than anything. More than I don't care what you study, just get used to learn how to be an adult. That's what it's good for. And they need that. They need that. And if they do it and kind of do it lightly and not focus on their grades or try to get lazy or spoiled or these things are very dangerous because you carry that forward into how you do everything else in your career. So as much as I would love to say I'm overseeing all their grades, I'm what I am doing is I am checking in on all the players, and we're obviously being a lot more flexible when they have their exams, and even if we've got the most important games, like their education has to come first. It can't be an issue. They can't be I don't know, superheroes who can do it all. You can have an exam the next day and attend your training and show up to your game. And no, we can't ask that of them, especially as players that don't get paid. So not yet. Hopefully that's something I'm planning to change very soon. Um, but we check in on them, and I've had one player whose grades were struggling. Really, she was really struggling with her education. She lived in Abu Dhabi, and she was one of my star players. I was very, very close to her. Like, she felt like my baby. And her father called me and told me that she wasn't doing well at school at all because she had 4 times a week, sorry, training here in Dubai with us. We had one match day, and then supposedly 2 days of training with the national team. That's 7 days a week of going back and forth from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, where you get stuck in the car for a good 4 hours. Standard is 4 hours minimum daily just to show up to training for an hour and a half. And I had to let her go. I had to release her to go play in a club in Abu Dhabi because she was going to fail otherwise. That was maybe the hardest thing I had to do. But I mean, it's not worth failing for.
No, you're putting the people first, and I think that's the most important thing. Let's talk about the football now. You've just finished the first season. Information on the league is very scarce, so forgive me, but I think I've got this right. You finished second in the league this season, I think.
No, we finished third.
No,
We
third.
finished third.
You were second.
Yeah.
Second last time I checked. Sorry, I
That's
finished
that's an
third.
outdated schedule. That's an outdated standings list.
I did say
So
information was scarce. So, but tell us how did, obviously third is still a fantastic achievement in in your first season. What's the season been like, and how do you reflect now that it's all over?
So our beginning was incredible. We played a qualifiers round of 10 games. So there was 10 teams. We all played each other once, and the top five made it to the top division, the first division league, and the bottom five went into the second division. Out of our first 10 games, we only lost one. And we lost one to the champions of the league, who were undefeated, didn't lose a single game, only conceded 2 goals all season. So they've been around since 2011. They are beasts and they're incredible. So the fact that that was the only game we lost made us feel like we were unbeatable, and we were the team to beat. So every team would show up wanting to take us out. And if a team came closer when they score, you would think from their celebrations that they won the entire league. So we were that much like on everyone's radars, and the ones they wanted the satisfaction of bursting our bubble. And so we had a great start, but then we went through a lot of shifts. So I changed the coaching staff, and with that, and some players had to go, some players we released. With change like that, obviously, instability isn't really ideal, especially in the first season. But our coach became the head coach of the under 15, so she had to go, and so we had to find something else that worked. That took time, and we eventually found our incredible coach, who we're all obsessed with, Coach Shamal Saqar. He's new to women's football, and I think new to coaching adults as well. But he is incredible, incredible, and he's changed so much with the team. So even when you watch them train and you see their discipline and just their eagerness to show up, everything's changed since he joined. But it also took time for the team to kind of reacclimate to his ways. They had to change their style of play, and they had to learn how to play in this new way with a couple of new players, the new coaches. So we started out the season, or the top division, thinking we were indestructible, but we lost our first 3 games, and then that was enough to have us end where we did. Third place isn't great because it's third out of 5, unfortunately. But that said, what was great was seeing how the team played. So even the games that we lost, besides the first one, which we just don't accept, but like we don't recognize the team that played that game. That wasn't us. But besides that, every other game we played so beautifully. They played a completely different game, and they played as a team, and you can see their growth on the pitch. So it didn't matter. We didn't feel, obviously we felt the pain of losing, but we were proud. We were proud of the development, the growth. So I think, third place aside, we're very happy with what we've done, especially for our first year. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. As I
that's
said, information is scarce. I did think it was a 10-team league, which is why I thought third wasn't too bad. But
But it's
there's
actually on the same page. We all get confused. On that same page, you need to keep scrolling all the way down, and then you'll see the other standings.
there you go.
Yeah.
Something for them to improve for next season. But obviously, there's lessons learned. So what now? Having learnt lessons in the first season, what lessons did you learn that that are going to allow you to build this to be bigger and better for season 2?
Um, Bigger and better. I have. I think scouting and having our own strong database of players that can join BANAAT FC. We have almost 500 players that have registered on our website in the UAE that want to play for the team, which is wild. I didn't know there were that many girls that played football or wanted to in this country. So I was very, very, pleasantly surprised by that. And there are a lot of girls that meet our minimum criteria. We're going to start hosting more tryouts. But in general, when things change during the season and then you end up, with a much smaller squad than you need to finish as strong as you have been, you kind of realize that you put yourself in that position. You got a little comfortable, and I don't want to get comfortable again. Obviously, the coaches do their part, and we're kind of all growing together because of the coaching staff now being new to the women's game as well. So we're keeping each other in check. If things are going great, they're like, all right, but we need to prepare for so and so and so. We need to always have our backup options and backup plans ready. Um, I've learned that, I mean, something I knew in general is that I cannot stand for disrespect and entitlement and anything that I see in a player like that kind of definitely rubs me the wrong way, like it would anyone. But because this is my club, I don't need to stand for it. So it's a I can decide what we stand for and our values and what we need to represent and how we need to be to each other. That can be, I'm not going to say a priority, because of course, if you talk to coaching staff, certain coaching staff, they're going to talk about how football comes first, but not to me. Not to me. It needs to come hand in hand. You could be the best player in the country, but if you're rude, you don't have to be my player. You can go and be the best player somewhere else. But it's a struggle to find the balance of people that check all the boxes and are incredible footballers. But I am happy about being strict about that and making the move that I need to make sure that the energy and the respect in the team come first, come ahead of everything. And besides that, collaborating and connecting to anyone in the industry, anyone in women's football, supporting each other. That's going to help us all grow so much. And I'm doing a lot already with at least four clubs out of the 10 that are in the expanded league, to help them with their next season, whether it's rebranding, consultation, kit design, athlete development, and also athlete brand development, sorry, and social media advice. So I'm supporting anyone however I can, and we're supporting each other. So there's a lot of give and take, and I think that's going to make the biggest difference when we stop looking at each other as competition. And I feel like we've been kind of pitted against each other just by entering the industry. You look at each other as competition, and you hear what other people have to say, like, but I'm not here to compete with you, and you're not here to compete with me. That's not the goal of creating an entire club. It cannot be about competing with one or two other people. It's got to be about something much bigger than all of us. And I think everyone's coming to that realization, and we're all gonna benefit from that very soon.
Yeah, it's fighting for the greater good. Just a couple to finish up on, because you've been incredibly generous with your time. Slightly more broad picture, but looking ahead, AFC this year will launch the Women's Champions League across Asia, which is a long time in the coming. I was very pleased to see that the UAE has actually flagged its intention to have a club involved in that, which I think is fantastic.
Yes,
How much is that an aspiration for you to get BANAAT into that
oh,
competition, and how?
it's a plan for us now. It's on paper already. That's something we're working towards.
And
But
and
like it's going to take a lot more for us to get there as a club, as an organization. Because we still need to learn about what does it take to actually play in the Champions League. So what happens when the club goes to play abroad in another country? There's just so much that is kind of foreign to this sector, to the women's game. So we're building towards it.
Yeah, but how much can having an Emirati club involved, whether that's Banat or someone else, how much can that do for the entire women's football scene in the Emirates and across the region? Because Saudi and Jordan clubs are going to be involved as well. How much can that sort of turbocharge the development as well?
It's going to be huge. I mean, the yeah, I mean, the club that's going is the undefeated champion Abu Dhabi Country Club. They are incredible and the best, and definitely the only deserving team right now to go and represent us and represent women's football here, on an international scale. They are going to show everyone the level that the UAE, I'm not going to say has everywhere, but they have it. So we all aspire to have what they have in terms of the talent and the organizational structure and the staff. They're incredible. And they're going to make us all very proud, however they perform. And we know they're going to perform. And them being out there is just going to show everyone that we're all out here too, and get people to do maybe a little bit more research on our league, and get the sponsors more interested, which is very important because more money means more growth. um, so yeah, it's going to be good.
And final one, I think it's been pretty obvious across this discussion that you are a dreamer, someone who likes to think big. So I'm sure this isn't a difficult one for you, but dare to dream for us. If we're sitting here again talking in 5 or 10 years' time, where is Banat FC at that point, and what does it look like?
I'll tell you where I'll be sitting in my office overlooking the girls training in our own stadium. Fingers crossed, of course.
That's a great vision. Again, I read that in an interview as well, that you said that was the vision of your own sort of purpose venue in Dubai for this team and for women's football.
If you've watched Ted Lasso, you'll know this the exact seat I'm talking about. Like that office, that's gonna be my office. And also Wrexham. Wrexham is a big inspiration for me. It's they're setting a benchmark to what you can do and how much change you can have on not just a club, on an entire city. So watch this space.
Watch this space, indeed. Budreya, thank you very, very much. Wish you every success in making every part of that vision come to life, because I think it's incredibly important. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll be keeping track of BANAAT FC now over the coming years, and checking in to see how you go. So thank you for all your time today, and good luck.
Thank you so much.